Welcome everyone to episode 46 of High Tech on the Low. Meirav, how are you this morning?
Perfect. How are you?
I am good. I'm really excited to have you.
I'm very excited to be here.
I mean, come on. First of all, let's talk about how long it's been since we've been talking, probably like a month at least since we've been talking. And then now to actually get you on the show in person, the lady of blockchain. I feel like I should have like a Bitcoin Batman sign in the sky.
Wonder Woman, you mean?
Yeah, right. Thank you. Wow. Batwoman, Wonder Woman, whatever you want to call it, the new Gal Gadot of blockchain here. But anyways, I'm very excited to have you on. And as always, we are sponsored by the Front Team community with 12 different communities, 6 verticals, and 3,000 members, always looking to connect. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about this larger world of data connection, blockchain, and the fun behind that.
Exactly. And where it can lead.
Exactly. So
and why we need it.
And why we need it. That's even more, the more thing that we all need to realize is why do we need this new technology that no one's understanding and everyone's scared of, and they see a bunch of monkeys on a billboard and assume that everything's good.
No. If they don't understand it, that's why we're here. That's part of a lot of what I do.
Amazing.
Kind of like helping people understand it and understand why they need it.
Okay, so Meirav, tell us a little bit about who you are. Right. Let's start with that, and then we'll move into the juicy part of this interview.
All right, so I'm a veteran in the fields of finance and technology with almost 20 years of experience, and combining the two before they were called fintech, financial technology. I started out as a programmer in the dot-com era, later became an investment consultant with the Israeli Security Authority, and combined the two disciplines while being the product manager and business manager of Lumi Trade, one of the biggest...
So you were doing all of that together at one time?
So I was actually, not at one time, but I combined the two worlds, the financial world on the one hand with security trading, and the other hand is the technology. And the technology on the other hand, I was combining the two before it was a thing. It's just like two of my geeks, right? And I was doing that for 7 years and building Lumi Trade is the security trading website of Bank Lumi,
right.
Which was chosen a few times as one of the best Israeli best security trading website, or website at all, but one of the 3 best security trading websites in Europe, alongside Credit Suisse and the Royal Bank of Scotland.
In Europe too?
In Europe, yeah.
Wow.
3rd place in Europe, like one of the 3 ones. Yeah, thank you. So that was my baby for 7 years, and then about 5 years ago, I left Bank Lumi after doing I loved working there, and I was immediately sucked into blockchain and crypto, because for me it was just like, okay, blockchain is just another type of database, right? It's just decentralized. It has its its upside and its low side.
Sure.
And crypto is just another type of, I'd say, a family of asset classes that have not been regulated. Just like any security, new securities that were out, options were not immediately regulated, or mutual funds. It took time, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was really natural for me to progress there.
So you saw it just as kind of a move to kind of understanding
data
step.
Better. Yeah, it's another step in both I see them as 2 separate products that can be intertwined together, or they can have a life of their own, right?
Okay.
So blockchain can be used not only for cryptocurrency, and digital currencies can be created without even using blockchain. Look at the central bank digital currency of China. No blockchain there, and it's not decentralized, but it's still digital currency.
Right.
Okay. So each one of these has a life of its own. In 6 months, I became the COO of Bancor that raised $153 million in the crowd sale that they had.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, that was very exciting. And that's where kind of like I did the other direction. Like if I was bringing innovation into a traditional company, which was what I was doing in Bank Lumi. With Bancor, I actually built a startup from the ground up, kind of like how do you put procedures and organize
like standards to the innovation
into the innovation. Which this is now I'm doing the 3rd position as COO. That's like. It's a crazy job to be a COO.
And that's your main gig today?
Well, no, it's not my main gig. I do that. I did the 2 other COO positions since then.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time, but it's a lot of fun because you're kind of like really building something that you want to work, and you get to work with the most exciting stuff. But at the same time, I am still helping traditional businesses and regulators in Israel and around the world to kind of like understand and grasp what's happening and get themselves into this, I'd say, this space.
Okay.
And I work with the Israeli regulator, a few regulators in the Far East and in Europe, and banks, and financial entities in Israel and abroad, in Europe and also in the Far East and in South Africa. And
I'm like trying to understand what you don't do. Like, how do you breathe?
Oh, I don't cook. Really, I'm really bad. Like when my kids see me in the kitchen, they're like, "Oh, Mom, please don't."
Okay, so note to self,
no
not going to
cooking.
Meirav's house for Sabbath dinner.
Don't. Yeah, I buy food, but no. And I think that and the thing that I enjoy most is actually kind of like I'd say educating whether it's the regulator, whether it's financial companies, whether
Okay.
it's startups, because I work with a lot of startups and companies at different stages of their life, in how to first of all understand what's happening in this space and be kind of like utilize where the space is going, and therefore create products that would bring not only revenue for themselves but actually value to the public, because there's so much that can be done and needs to be done
It makes
using
sense.
these technologies.
No, it makes sense at the end of the day. What you're trying to do is, you have this large amount of information that you've garnered through your career and whatnot, and you're trying to save it, save it, share it to the world, and share it to the ecosystem itself.
Exactly.
So what do you think?
Oh, and I just forgot to say something.
Please.
Pat my back. I was chosen as one of the 100 most inspirational women in blockchain in 2020.
Hey,
And
congratulations.
twice chosen, thank you, and twice chosen in London as on the fintech power list of the world. So I'm kind of like
I want to step back. I don't know.
No,
It's
don't.
like the aura is,
I still don't cook, remember?
Okay,
So-
right. Okay, so at least I can come and cook, right? That's
yeah,
why,
you can come in, anybody like
Okay,
yeah.
Jordan
I like
the
eating,
chef,
but
that's it.
yeah.
All right. So why do you think, when it sounds like you really dove very deep into this world, especially after, moving to Lil Me and saw it even in a sense before it got really sexy, right?
Yeah, completely. It's my geek, and then it just became interesting for everybody else.
Exactly, right? And I want to know, why do you think recently the space has been gaining a lot of traction, especially, we can call the space being blockchain, crypto, NFT, metaverse, but why has it started gaining this type of traction in the world, internationally? Because let's be real, up until maybe 2020, not many people knew about Bitcoin or NFTs or the metaverse or whatever. I mean, people even today are just learning about these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I heard about blockchain maybe in 2018. I heard about Bitcoin first when I was in college, I think, but no one really cared.
Nobody got, okay. So I think it's happening because of three things that are happening around the world at the same time.
Okay.
One of them is the idea of cryptocurrencies or digital currencies that can be programmed, kind of like change a lot of paradigms that have to do in the monetary world. Okay.
Like what?
Because so first of all, we all grew up with money being used as cash, or we could use it with credit card.
Sure.
Here, there's an opportunity for first of all, anybody can create currencies right now, right? Anybody can issue tokens. That
Right.
means that the amount of monetary money around the world can actually be user generated, right?
Okay.
So that's a big deal from the regulator's point of view. Like, how do we deal with, let's say, Facebook wanting to create their own token? What does that mean, right? And add to that the second layer of the smart contracts, which means that with every time a currency is moved, it can have a piece of code programmed embedded inside that. Okay, which means that when the money moves from one hand to the other, it can have additional layers, except of just the value being transferred from one person to the other. But it could have a set of rules that's programmed inside. Okay, stating when and how you could. Okay, so you could put like a contract that's a smart contract into the money. That means that we can decide, let's say if I transfer 100 shekels to you,
Okay.
that means that we can program it in a way that these 100 shekels can be used only after a certain set of rules happens. Let's say that you give me a certain product or something, or it can be burned or returned back to the sender according to a set of specific rules that happen.
So like,
Okay?
if I don't fulfill my end of the bargain, maybe it's saying like,
Yes.
hey, you have to give me, you have
Yes.
to cook for me, right?
Yes.
So you have to
Yes.
cook for me. I don't give you the burger.
Exactly.
You don't get the 50 shekels or 100
so
shekels.
you can program it. Now that is something that kind of like can change a lot of
Totally.
paradigms on the global level. Okay, because what does that mean for centralized entities? What does that mean for central banks? Okay, how are they going to be using it? And look at China and how it's using the smart contracts, right? You know what happened.
I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about it.
All right. So China decided to create the digital yuan, right? They rolled it out
I
about
remember this.
2 years ago, a year and a half ago. They were starting to play with it.
After they banned
And,
Bitcoin, right?
it's in parallel.
Okay.
Because look what they did. It's really clever what they did. They and they're not doing it on a decentralized place. They're doing it centralized, right?
Okay, as the
so that's what I
Chinese
said.
do.
The Chinese, yeah.
Yeah.
So what they did was that they said, okay, whoever wants to play with with this new digital yuan, download our wallet, the
Okay.
government wallet, and not only that, you're going to get an equivalent of, let's say, imagine $100 inside that wallet, and now you can start using it. So people downloaded the app, they saw the amount of money that was in there, and they were really excited and everything. Then they said, okay, let's start using it, and then they found out that you can't transfer it from one person to the other because that's the way it's programmed. Okay,
So
Not
isn't
only
that against the model entirely?
No, it's just programmed that way that you
Okay.
can't transfer it from one person to the other. Okay, so they said, okay, so let's go to stores, and then they found out that only stores that are programmed in the smart contract can take this kind of money. That means that stores that are not do not appear in the smart contract, you cannot use
They're
this
just
money.
screwed.
They're screwed, and the people can't buy there. And then inside the
Wow.
stores that people can buy, only certain amounts of specific products that the Chinese government enabled people to buy,
course.
right, in the smart
Of
contract.
course.
Only those are the products that can be bought. And not only that, the money that
Amazing.
you didn't use, let's say you had 50 shekels left in your wallet or $50 left in your wallet, if you didn't use them up in a certain amount of time, it just disappears.
It just goes.
Goes away. Okay? You don't have it in your
Wow.
wallet anymore. Okay? Now,
You don't have the wallet, or you don't have the money in the
you
wallet?
have the wallet, but you don't have the money. The money just
Wow.
disappears because you didn't use it. Okay?
Okay.
So this is like an interesting implementation. Of course, it might be that it's just because it's the pilot stage of the digital yuan, and they're going to change it, and it's not going to be like this. But this ability to be able to program the money and say who can use it, in what terms, and in what way. Let's say theoretically, you could program money. Let's say people that get a pension, they can only use it for medicine and food and basic housing, and they can't use it otherwise, right? You can program the money that way.
So
Okay.
is that meaning that like the world is turning in this direction? Do you see it going there? Because everyone talks about, crypto and blockchain as being this great liberator, right? This great decentralization of power. As you're even saying, like, I can create user generated tokens. I can create Jordan money.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, are you seeing that the trend is going to start going to centralization of this whole system?
Well, I'd say that I like saying this way, okay? Technology continues to advance.
Sure.
Okay. The implementations that you can use continue to advance as well. Okay.
of course.
But there's another pillar that all of us as creators and users need to think about, which is the part I'd say that the ethics and the moral of how we want the world to look like, right? Because we can create a utopian world or dystopian world because the technology is there. I mean,
Right.
things that we have only imagined like 10 or 20 years ago are now available to all of us, right?
Okay.
And the question is are we as humans, do we want this to go in that direction or that direction? What do we want? What do we not want? Do we want, like, you can talk about this in any type of technology, right?
Sure.
Talk about biology, talk about cloning things,
Sure.
talk about
Genetics, whatever you want.
genetics or
Yeah.
whatever you want, right? Theoretically, everything we could have imagined as science fiction, or a lot of it that we only could have imagined as science fiction a few years ago, is actually there. Now the question is, do we want it to be implemented, and by who? Okay.
So how do we make that decision?
Oh, okay. So you were asking before, like, are the governments, like, do we see centralized or decentralized? What I'm
Definitely.
seeing here is that because of these new technologies, you're seeing, I'd say, a power struggle between the different entities, and you can see it on many levels
Sure.
happening in the world. Okay. So we're on the one hand, you have decentralization, right? And then you have a new network of people being able to transact with each other on the monetary level.
Right, peer-to-peer
or
transfers, exchanges.
or even, exchanges when somebody's moving money from one wallet to the other without a
100%.
centralized exchange. It's decentralized. I mean, the centralized entities do not necessarily even know about it.
Right.
okay?
It's
And
like
then-
when I sent money to myself the other day. I sent money through my, Trust wallet to MetaMask, and that just sent it back to my wallet.
and
No one had to talk to me.
You could do the same thing with crypto, right? You could do it from two different people, right? Like
100%.
I can send Bitcoin to you, and it won't necessarily. And the centralized entities will not necessarily have the knowledge that it happened, right? Unless we decide
Unless
that
they
we
do
want
China.
to be. Unless we want to tell them, right? So now, that's actually, what is that? What does this mean? It means it's taking power from the centralized entities, okay? And that's why I said it's in parallel, because if you're looking at a system where, let's say, China decides that it wants everybody on the social credit scoring system, and they want to use the money only according to your credits, your social credit score, or whatever that is, they can be very, very centralized with these new technologies, and the back door is crypto. Right?
Wow.
Because it's the way out of the system.
That's crazy.
So obviously China will not want this to happen.
Of
And that's
course.
why we're seeing every few months that China's like, no more crypto. We're closing down everything. We don't want it, because it's like the loophole, right? It's the way out of the system. So now, but it's funny because I think that when you see like a power struggle, one side is pushing and the other side is pushing more. So, so what you're seeing actually around the world is that on the one hand, you have the centralized entities, the central banks, and it's not only China, because the central bank of England, I think it was June or July, told the ministers in England, guys, we can program the digital pound. What kind of like smart
How do you want to do
contracts?
it, basically?
How do you want to do it? Right? So that question is kind of being raised to the centralized entities themselves, and each one of them can decide how far do we want to program the new kind of money that's coming out, right?
Wow. But it's interesting to me because, this really gets on a whole another level of the idea of, privacy versus
Oh,
public
yes.
versus tracking. We have iOS 14 destroying Facebook's tracking, and at the same time, we have the central banks talking about this. Now, I want to move this to a little bit of a tech, situation here too, because this whole discussion of centralization and decentralization is, I think, something that's going to haunt us for the next however long, right?
Yeah.
But in the tech space, it's interesting because a lot of people, I probably even sense this kind of fight going on between people. And they're scared to get in.
It's not necessarily people. I think it's that the fight is like on a macro level, right? You have the governments on the one hand, the people that want decentralization on the other hand. You have the tech giants. Wait, what about the tech giants and the big companies that also want centralization, but they don't want it to be? They don't want the centralization in the hands of the governments. They want the centralizations in their hand, right?
Of course.
And now we have multiple monopolies on conglomerates that have to do with information transfer. Like, look at YouTube as opposed to Spotify, as opposed to Rumble, or it's like we have these big centralized entities that have to do with social media, right?
Of course.
Facebook and even Google, right? And the question is, how do we deal with them? Because a lot of the people that are looking, with worried eyes about centralized entities are not only looking at governments as centralized entities, but also at the giants, right? At the tech giants.
Wow.
And the question is, how do we deal with them?
So it's much beyond just the level of kind of financial regulation that's going on.
It's not only finance. It's finance. It's privacy. It's control. It's the ability to say what you think and not be censored. Okay, which we're seeing. Look at we're talking about. Look at Spotify versus YouTube. Versus Rumble, and there was a whole drama about this in the last couple of weeks.
Of course.
Because YouTube has been censoring people ever since they started censoring. I think they even censored. I think it was the somebody, the state official in Florida,
Spotify
right?
did Joe Rogan. I mean, that was their big thing.
And then this happened again, that Spotify was censoring or not asking about Joe Rogan, and then Rumble wrote a letter out there and saying, Joe Rogan, come to us, we're going to pay you, I don't know, what was it, like $100 million?
Tons of
or
money.
Whatever that is, tons of money, just come and move your podcast to us, right? And then you have other companies like decentralized, because they understand that if you have a company that's too centralized and it starts censoring, then you have an issue, right? Mm-hmm. Because how much power do you want to give to one entity, or 5 entities for that matter, right? And how much of a big brother situation do we want to have around us? And it's funny because you see the power struggle, kind of like the more the centralized entities push, the more people are waking up and saying, wait, what? This is not
it's kind of like a give and take
in
sense like that, in terms of how users in the ecosystem themselves are kind of saying, wait, okay, someone tells me all of a sudden they want to centralize this whole decentralized system. Wait. You're going against me.
This system, like we knew that there was it's like kind of like the rules are changing because of these centralized entities going crazier and crazier and centralizing things, right? Wow. Because on the one hand, you're saying, there was freedom of speech. Wait, then how does that work with deplatforming people on Twitter and YouTube, right? And then you have a lot of people saying, wait, the system's kind of like problematic. And it's funny because I get people coming to me and saying, listen, I want to learn everything about blockchain and digital currencies because I think the centralized entities are going crazy. Please teach me. Wow. Okay. I started giving courses because people come to me and say, now I can teach one by one, right? It's a good monetary system for me, right? But it doesn't make sense. I don't have enough time to teach the people. So I started opening classes and I'm saying, okay, bring your friends. Let's just talk about this, and I'll teach you all at once, right? And then we started having classes. So
you turned into this whole kind of system.
I didn't turn into a system. I'm in the middle of it, right? Because everybody's like saying, okay, just build a crypto academy, because I am teaching at on university level, right? I teach MBA programs, fintech or blockchain, according to what the universities asked me to do for their programs, right? So I taught at the College of Management an MBA program of fintech. So for me, it's like, okay, I love teaching, right? I love explaining this. I love kind of like opening people's minds to the new things that can happen. So people were coming up to me, and yes, we opened a course, and now there's another course, and another course. Like 3 courses are now on the verge of being opened. One of them is especially for people that understand and want to say, okay, I want to understand this new kind of system because something is wrong in the centralized world. Okay. I want to understand, so at least I know what people are talking about and how to do it myself in case I want to. That's one group of people. The second group of people is actually companies coming up to me and saying, we want to understand as companies, how do we enter the space of blockchain, NFTs, metaverse? What does it mean? Okay. What are the new opportunities there? How can we create value, therefore creating revenue for ourselves? as companies, right?
Sure, as
Or
companies
as
who want to get
regulators.
into the space and make money and kind of grow their
Yeah,
business.
exactly.
Okay.
So sometimes it's companies that come and, take me in and say, okay, let's teach all of our employees. And sometimes it's the head of them, or I have directorionim,
Directories?
directories.
Okay.
Okay, directors of companies coming and saying, we want, a full course to teach all of us so that, and
But what are you teaching them when you teach them? Are you teaching them like kind of just the general building blocks, or are you teaching them how they can kind of convert their business to blockchain and crypto?
Yes.
Or all the above?
Everything, like I sit down with them and then we decide what they want to learn, okay? Because some of them want to understand where the world is going so that they can adapt their business. Let's say I had like one of the big Israeli financial companies wanted me, they came up to me and said, okay, let's, actually I had a few of them that came up to me and we're talking about, let's teach our people how this works so that we can start generating ideas and start adapting to what's happening. We need to understand this. And this was more on I'd say on a high level, trying to understand like what is happening, what are the building blocks that we have, what can be done, what is being done, and how does the future look so that they can start the process of thinking by themselves of where they want to take the company.
Okay.
And then I have more practical courses that they call me in and they say, okay, we want to understand
how to build a smart contract.
Exactly.
Say.
Okay. And and on a private level, how do we start? If it's for private people, how do we? And also as kind of like teaching their people, their workers, right? Okay. So what are the where can we trade? What does it mean to buy a token? How do we create an NFT? Right.
So like very simple ideas within the space
Everything,
to kind of understand
from the practical
it. Okay.
side and up to the macro.
You're like
side.
unpacking this whole industry basically for these companies.
It's not that I'm not doing like it's not happening on purpose because this is not what I set out to do, right? But it's like but there's so much I'd say people are so interested and companies are so interested that obviously I want to help them, right?
Sure.
And I want to give them this knowledge so that they can continue building their business or themselves, right, in a way that enables them to adapt to the changes that are happening around the world, because this is like
So wait, how can they? I want to know just for a little bit right now. How can we adapt? How can I, as a business owner today, adapt my business?
Okay, so first of all, knowledge, understand it. Understand what's happening, understand the technologies, understands what they enable, and understand what I'd say where it's leading to. Okay? Because let's look at the metaverse for a second.
Let's
okay?
do it, yeah.
It seemed as though the metaverse was kind of like a game or an idea that geeks were into, right?
Sure. Or Black Mirror-y, right? Either way.
Yeah. I think Black Mirror is used as a user manual right now, but let's forget about that. But yeah, let's not go into that one. But so people heard metaverse. Metaverse is just an idea of kids playing Fortnite or whatever that is, right?
Right.
And the thing is that when we're looking at what's happening right now and kind of like pick our heads up and looking at what's happening, that's not true. What's happening is that the internet is being recreated in 3D.
Ah.
Okay, so the metaverse is actually the new internet.
So they should be calling it Web 3D, basically.
Exactly. Now, it could be decentralized. It does not necessarily need to be centralized where somebody controls. First of all, the internet was supposed to have been...
right? Web 3D, Web 3 decentralized, or Web 3D, Web 3D.
Right, it could play. Right, I know.
There you go.
You know what's interesting? That when you're kind of like living in these new things that are happening,
of course,
you see the new terms being created while they're being created.
Wow.
Right? It's really interesting.
Well, yeah, because you're pioneering the whole space.
Exactly. So you have all these new kind of like words that are being created. Everybody after a while, it's like DeFi, decentralized finance, right?
Of course, yeah. Now that's going to be the new thing.
We didn't even when at Bancor when they were doing it, because what they did was actually they created an exchange that was decentralized. It was actually DeFi. It was decentralized finance, but the words were not there.
They didn't call it that.
No, the word was not the term DeFi was not yet mainstream, or even I don't know if it was even dubbed at that time, right? They were just doing it because they were saying, okay, we can do an exchange like right now we have Uniswap and PancakeSwap and and all the rest of these ideas.
Binance,
Let's do
whatever,
let's do no, but Binance and Coinbase are centralized entities. You have exchanges that are decentralized, right, in different nodes, and not everything is held in one place, right?
Okay,
so that's the idea of decentralized finance, that the different nodes are not in one entity like Binance, which is a centralized entity and everybody trades on them.
Right.
Okay. When it's decentralized finance, then you have different nodes in different areas dispersed around the world, and people are trading with each other, and there is no centralized entity necessarily holding holding the value, I'd say, of the money or whatever that is.
Right. Because at the end of the day, if Binance goes under,
Yeah.
We all go under.
Everybody that
But
had
if
their money inside.
PancakeSwap goes under, well, then that node powers up over there and keeps it going.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So when people were starting to play with these things with the decentralized finance, the words were not there. So that's one of the things that was. So what you said about the 3D, like Web 3D, right? Maybe that should be the word, and it started here.
All right, guys, everyone, you heard it here first. High tech on the low. With Meirav Harel.
Exactly. Just like the term huddle it, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you were actually saying that.
Yeah.
Like, huddle. Whoever thought about that?
Yeah. Right.
know?
Instead of hold it. Huddle it.
Right.
Was he drunk? Was he on drugs? Did he just mix the letters?
the
Was he
above.
dyslexic? Right? What happened here? But it just became a term, right?
Okay.
So all of these new terms that are being created because it's a new world that is being created, and if a few months ago it looked like it's far fetched and everything, now we realize that it is becoming the new internet. And this is where the big players are there. So Nike is there, Adidas is there, Gucci is there. What was it? JP Morgan Chase entered. They bought land on Decentraland, right?
I saw that.
Okay. And
Atari's even there. You know, who heard of Atari even?
Okay.
In the last years?
So it reminds me of the .com era where people were. Oops, sorry. Yes. So it reminds me, like, on the first days of the internet, of people saying, "Wait, we need a website, but what could this website do? What's the functionality?" Right? We want to be there. We understand that everybody's going to be in the metaverse, right?
Of course.
People are going to be looking for us. How do we want this to look? Do we want a shop that's 3D? Do we want to give services? Are we going to be giving ad space? What exactly are we doing? Do we want to buy land, which is kind of like buying, I'd say, domains,
Sure.
like on GoDaddy or whatever that is, right? That's what you want, right? You want to be there. You want to be on the metaverse, right?
So what's like the biggest mistake someone in our world right now could do in regards to blockchain and metaverse, other than ignore it, right? You know,
that's it.
That's
Ignore
the one.
it.
That's the biggest
Ignore
mistake.
it and say it's gonna go. It's too complicated for me. I don't want to know. Okay, that's the biggest mistake.
Like you see this. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Full disclosure, I'm with you. Okay, I believe that we're going there. I'm involved in NFT projects. I'm involved in crypto. I've been invested in it. I'm also working with companies in it. I'm with you, but you know, at the end of the day, a lot of people also ask me the same question. You're just playing around with whatever. It doesn't make sense to me, and the same thing. So I always try to fight them back with logic and everything.
You don't need to fight them back. You need to explain, because if they're thinking that you're just playing with something that's not real, then they don't necessarily understand what's happening. So they
need to understand that reality.
They need to understand what the technology is and what the use cases are, and therefore where it's leading to, and what the power struggles around it are, and why this is happening. Okay, so obviously, just like in any new technological development, there's like this graph of the early adapters and then the whole hype, right? And then you understand, and then it goes and then it goes down crazily, right? Because you understand that it can't be implemented that fast, and then the new developments start happening, right? And then it becomes mainstream, right? So you saw that happening with the internet, right? 1999, 2000, like it was a hype. Everybody was like, oh yes, the internet. And then in 2000, the bubble burst. And everything went down. I was a programmer. Why did I move to finance, right? Because for a year and a half, there was no work for programmers. No need for programmers. Nothing was there, right? And the funny thing, though, is that when you look at what all the, I'd say, technology companies were kind of like saying that the internet would enable, fast forward 5 or 10 or 15 years, everything came true. It all happened. But there's a time gap between thinking about an idea and the ability to implement it and to push it forward on a marketing and scale it. Okay? And that's where, like, you have all these ideas. That's why the graph goes like this. And people understand, wait, this technology can do this and this and this. Let's create it. And then they understand that it's not that easy, right? Because you need users to adopt it, and you need to be able to create it. And then everything goes kind of like down.
Okay, so at the end of the day, basically, you're kind of we need to get into that spot right now where we're probably, in a sense, at the bubble almost. And it's
so I think that
soon.
NFTs right now in their current state, with just as a means to keep loyalty or royalties for art,
right?
I think we're at the top of this. But what's interesting is that this graph does not necessarily have to be sequential, because it could be that this is one graph and then the other graph is being created at the same time, right?
And kind of like the better use cases are being
exactly
already developed.
and by companies that can actually do it. Okay, so you look like let's take again, look at the internet. In this area, you had AOL, right? And then everything dropped, and then came Google.
Exactly, right. And everyone was on AOL for the longest time.
And AIM, that was the thing. Blah, blah, but they didn't have a use case. They didn't know what to do with it, right? And then, but then Google came, and Facebook came, and Amazon came, right? They didn't come in the first time,
Right.
okay? But I think that the world is like, there's this great sentence by Gordon Moore, one of the founders of Intel, that says the change has never happened this fast before, but it's never going to be this slow again. So
I like
I
that.
think that
That's a
the
good one.
pace of how innovation is working and this cycle becomes faster and faster as time progresses, okay? Because if we're looking at the amount of time that it took from the hype time to the downtime and then to the scalable implementations on the use case of internet, it took like what, 5-10 years, right?
Right, of course.
But look at blockchain right now, okay? The bubble, the you had everybody going excited. 2017, 2018, everybody was creating stuff, and then came the winter of blockchain, right?
Right. The big drop for Bitcoin, I remember
Right.
too, 2018-ish.
And then and then suddenly what we're seeing now is that blockchain is again happening, but it only took like what, 2 years?
So it's
Okay,
interesting.
so it's really interesting. Is it happening, or is it another hype? Is it another wave of hype,
Hard to
or
say.
are we now seeing more? I'd say more advanced and more. Well, no, but because if governments are creating digital currencies, then I guess they're the
It
real
really
players.
depends, though, right? Because at the same time, you kind of said from before, and I'm
Right, they're
bringing
not
it back.
using blockchain, but they're using.
They're
But
not
they are
using
using
blockchain, they're
but
also going against
But they
the
are
idea.
using the smart contracts.
Right, they're going to a smart contract,
So they
but
are
they're
using
also
the
taking
technology,
away the idea.
right?
though.
Exactly, because that means that they're not using all of the Lego pieces that are out there. They're using the ones that they want in order to create where they want to create the future, right?
To create their own chain,
Exactly.
if you will,
Okay. Which is fine because Google did not use all the elements of AOL and they added other stuff because people that did not necessarily notice that all the idea that you could utilize data as a growth engine.
Interesting.
Right? AOL did not realize that. Google didn't realize it at the beginning either. It took them time to reach that business model of understanding that, wait, data is our business model.
Interesting.
Right?
It's interesting how you also are able to see those larger connections, which is what I sometimes feel people lack in our day and age, is that they're not seeing these kind of trends and patterns from the past almost
and how
reform now.
Right.
What do you think? And we're getting towards the end of the podcast, so I want to know
didn't
from
talk
your
about
sense.
data.
Well,
All right,
now
ask
you have
away,
the chance.
ask away. Okay,
now you have the chance.
Ask away.
What is your advice to entrepreneurs today? I'm, be honest with you right now. I'm 28 years old. I'm young in the space. I'm figuring out myself. I have my own business. Someone else, one of my friends just started his own business.
Right.
We're young entrepreneurs and even, older entrepreneurs who are starting their first business. What do you have your advice for us when we're getting into our own businesses now, whether it's tech or not, and how to kind of adapt to this whole blockchain reality?
Okay. So I'd say 3 things, right? On different levels.
Okay.
First of all, as we said, learn it, understand where it's going. Let's say here, just to give this knowledge to people. Okay. The idea of NFTs that I said is right now on the bubble. The next implementation where it could be valuable is actually enabling the creators of data, which is us on the podcast,
Of course.
monetize it instead of the tech giants, right? Okay, so the moment that we have people actually have the ability, like if you're so it goes like this. Let me try to organize my thoughts. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to understand what's happening. You need to understand what the building blocks are, and you need to understand where the gaps are and what could be built in different directions. And then start thinking, wait, what's missing? Okay, and not only what's missing, where do I want to see the world going to? Do I believe in centralized entities, or do I believe in the metaverse, or do I believe in NFTs as the storage of value for people and not just for creators? Not
Royalties
just the ones
for creators and
not just in art, but in anything, right?
Right, anything.
Then after you understand it, you understand what the building blocks are. Say, okay, how am I going to build it in a way that gives value to people in the direction that the world is going to? Okay, so the democratization of data and having people be able to hold it for themselves, right? That's something that needs to be solved. There's an anomaly right now in the world, right? Because we're creating data, the tech giants are monetizing it.
I'm getting nothing out of it, basically,
exactly.
except for maybe what they want to send me as a lead.
Exactly,
right?
right. And not only that, they're deplatforming you if you're not saying the right things. Isn't this the time to solve this anomaly? Isn't it the time to say, let's find solutions? We don't have to use the structures that exist with what was created in the last, what is this, only 20 years since these tech giants were created, right? We don't have to use this. So now you can start saying, okay, so I want to create a better kind of solution that solves this anomaly that now exists, right?
I mean, it's crazy. I was even just thinking, it's wild. We all think these are so institutionalized systems, but you're right. We can just work
they're
around
just
them.
20 years. They're just 20 years. And again, look at Rumble. Look at all of these other players that are now, I don't remember if Rumble is decentralized or not, but imagine yourself a decentralized system that says, Joe Rogan, come to us. We're decentralized. You can never be deleted, right? And anyone that has a podcast, exactly. You're never going to be deleted on our system. And you know what? Look at the crowdfunding. Look what happened with the crowdfunding that happened in Canada for the truckers, right? It's a centralized entity. $10 million were collected by crowdfunders. And then because it's a centralized entity, it could have been stopped. It stopped, right? They couldn't give the money, okay? Whereas if it was a decentralized system, could that have happened? Okay.
Wow.
Now we as developers and people and anybody who's listening to us needs to ask themselves, where do we want the world to go? So some people will say, no, we don't like the idea of what the truckers are doing. They're bad, blah, blah, blah. And we do want the governments and the companies to control all of this. And we trust our governments and companies, right?
Well, you bring us back to the start of this episode. And basically, I think is a perfect way to kind of, summarize our episode, which is at the end of the day, we as people and as users have to decide where we want to take this.
Exactly. That's the idea. Okay.
So
that's the idea. Because if I'm looking at the power on the chessboard of what's happening in the world and creating the future. So you have the governments that are kind of like, where do they want to take it? And then you have the tech giants that are kind of like a given, but they're not necessarily, what's their interaction, right? But then you have the public.
And what's our interaction?
Exactly. And how do we want to interact in this chess game, right? And do we think that human evolution has reached the point where we don't need strong, kind of like I'd say dictatorship leadership telling us what to do, or we as people, we know what our value system is, we believe in things, and we know that we can run this in a better way. And if we're talking about a better way of running, here's another anomaly that exists. Just one last idea for developers. Please. In Israel, we have like an issue that people that are elected don't necessarily do what they promised to do ahead.
Sure.
All right. So wouldn't it make sense that their salaries would have been on smart contracts on the blockchain? No, and whatever they said that they're going to do during the time that they're in the government should be written in there, and they only get paid their salary if they do what they promised ahead of the elections.
That's an interesting concept.
And if not, they don't get their salary.
Or we can even do proof of vote, and I can just decide if I want to vote if they've done a good enough job, and I say, you deserve your salary.
Right.
If not, bye.
Or even use a system where let's say, what happens right now is that you're choosing elected people. They go and vote on the different votes that they have. Sometimes they don't show up. Let's say you have votes here where 100 of the 120 parliament members did not even vote for something that was really, really important for everybody, right? So what if it was like in what you have with capital markets, right? When you're owning a stock, you have the right to vote. Now, if you don't vote, then it goes to the biggest players, right?
Of course.
Okay, but you can see the same kind of, like, you could create the same kind of thing, right? And you can say, okay, great, my parliament members did not vote, but because of blockchain or because of these systems, I can vote as an end user, just like I'm holding a stock.
Balances and checks.
Exactly.
And balances,
Exactly. So I think that all of us are now, first of all, we're living in a crazy, interesting time, okay? Because all the paradigms, like, it's like if you're looking at human evolution on all the levels, right? Monetary, financial, democracies, centralized, decentralized, power struggles, how do you disperse value, right? Everything is kind of like being shifted and recreated. We're in the middle of I'd say, an evolution. It's another step in the human evolution, not only in finance, but also I think on ethics and morals and everything else. We're kind
and
of
how we deal with each other.
Exactly. How do we want to work? What kind of society do we want to create as humanity, right? And we're all living in this amazing, interesting time, and kind of like, but I'm older right now. I'm almost 50, right? You're the young generation. You guys can decide where do you want the world to go, right? And your ideas as startups and as companies are going to be the ones that are going to be creating the future that all of us are going to be living in 10, 15 years, right?
Oh my God!
Right?
This is like the biggest inspirational speech I've ever heard in my life right now. To end this, come on! Like I'm like starting the whole future of the Web 3D. I just said it here. All these things.
And on all the levels, I really think that's true. I think this is what all of the people out there that are now creating. They're actually creating the future. Right.
Wow.
And things are happening so fast that we don't necessarily understand what's going to happen in 5-10 steps. But it's there. It's going to happen, right?
That's crazy.
And if all of us decide, let's say we're going on, on the metaverse, that's what's going to happen, right? And if we all decide that we're going to be centralized, that's what's going to happen. If we decide that we're not centralized and we do not want to play that game that the tech giants are taking us and some of the governments, not all of them, are kind of like taking us, then we, the people can decide.
It seems like it could go probably someplace in the middle there, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be checks and balances.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, Meirav, I want to just say this has been an incredible podcast. I want you to come back so much because I feel like we've only even scratched really the surface of this entire space, as you said it. And I really just thank you for coming on and really giving people, I really think, a really good breakdown on kind of things they need to think about and consider when entering this space.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, and thank you so much
for coming.
Thank you for
having me and inviting me here.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. If you would like to listen to more episodes not on our YouTube channel, please follow the links below to Spotify or Apple Music.